Good evening and welcome to tonight's city council meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First thing I'm going to ask for is agenda changes.
Mr. Mayor, under reports G3, we will not be giving the financial report this evening. We'll move that to next meeting. That's the only change staff has.
Okay. This time we'd like to open up for public forum. Is there anybody here wishing to address the council that's not on the agenda? Don't believe so, so we'll close the public forum. And I'm going to ask for approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, after reviewing the consent agenda, if there are no changes, I would move to approve it as submitted.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes. We'll move on to unfinished business, and we have none this evening. So we'll move right into new business. And the first item is a public hearing for the 2021 amended budget. I'll open that public hearing now. Don't believe anybody is here to address the council regarding the 2021 budget. So
Let's go ahead and close the hearing at that point. Take comments from the bench.
okay, so we'll go ahead and, do we want the comments first?
No, you can go ahead and close the public portion of the hearing, and then it's just a matter of discussion among the governing
So I'm
body.
gonna close that public hearing for the 2021 amended budget, and I'll take questions from the council at this time if anybody has any. Hearing nothing from the council, we'll move on to our next item, which is a funding request from the Old Settlers Committee.
We gotta make a motion on it.
Oh, we gotta approve that, don't we?
So I'll make a motion to adopt the amended 2021 budget relating to gas revenues and expenditures for the city of Halstead, Kansas. Authorize governing body signatures on the document and to direct staff to provide the amended budget to Harvey County and the state of Kansas.
Second.
So we've got the motion and the second to publish the 2021 budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And that motion carries unanimously. Now we'll move on to the funding request from the Old Settlers Committee, and I believe Mr. Weber is here this evening to address the council.
Good evening. My name is Alan Weber, and I am the chairperson for the Halstead Old Settlers Committee. On behalf of Old Settlers Committee, I'd like to thank the City of Halstead for the last year's donation to our committee. I would also like to take this opportunity to say thank you to our city staff for everything that they do to help make this annual celebration possible. I am here this evening once again to ask for our annual donation of $8,000 for this year's Old Settlers events. And also I'd like to ask for the council's approval for Main Street to be closed from 9 a.m. Saturday, August 14th, from the railroad tracks on North Main to 6th Street for the Grand Parade. That's all I have.
Okay.
Well, we have two issues there, so I would make a motion to approve, unless there's any discussion or questions, I'd like to make a motion to approve the donation to the Old Settlers Committee for amount of not to exceed $8,000. And that'd be it.
Second.
Have the motion and the second for the grant to Old Settlers Committee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And then the closing of,
How do we want to do that? Is that,
How,
what was it, from 9? The closing of Main Street from 9? What was it again?
9 a.m. to approximately 11 for the Grand Parade,
And this is on August 14th.
August 14th,
from
Saturday.
where to where? I'm sorry, I didn't.
The tracks, the railroad tracks on North Main and till 6th Street.
Specify time, location, and date.
Is that the only time you need them closed?
Should be, yes.
You don't need them, we're not having a street dance or anything like that you'd need to,
All of that is going to be in Riverside Park this year.
okay?
you got that one? Or
I think I missed some stuff if
Oh,
you've got
and
it.
I missed some stuff also. Okay, so, move to, close Main Street from 9 AM to 11 AM on August 14th for the Grand Parade, and also north
From the railroad.
From the railroad tracks
from the railroad tracks.
To
on
Sixth.
till 6, yeah.
6th. Right, okay.
I'll second it.
Got it.
We have the motion to close Main Street on 8/14 from 9 AM to 11 AM from the railroad tracks to Sixth Street. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Next on the agenda is a consideration of a grant sponsorship for the Halstead Housing Authority. I believe we have people from the Halstead Housing Authority here this evening. Go ahead and step up to the podium and tell us why you need us to sponsor this.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I'm Ron Cronister, Chair of the Halstead Housing Authority Board of Directors, and I'd like to introduce our brand-new Executive Director, Donina Davidson, who's just come on. We're so excited to have her in our leadership position. Donina's with me this evening because she will be integral in this grant. I'd like to share with you just a moment why we're bringing this proposal to you. The Halstead Housing Authority operates under two government departments. The Cottonwood Acres, which sits at the corner of 6th Street and 801, which was the first units that were built in 1981, is run under the auspices of the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Development Program. Then in 1984, the Meadowlark and Sunflower Heights on 10th Street were built, and they are under the auspices of the Housing and Urban Development Department. And those two programs are administered by one Halstead community group, which is the Halstead Housing Authority. We receive our funding two ways. We receive government subsidies from each of those two departments, and we receive rent from our tenants. That comprises our operating budget. The Housing and Urban Development Department, on top of that, provides a yearly amount of money for capital expenditures. It's called the Capital Funds Program. And they determine that amount and they provide that for us. We provide the plan in which we're going to spend it. Cottonwood Acres and the Rural Development Program under the Department of Agriculture has a capital fund program, but it's self-funded. Each month, out of our operating budget, we must supply a certain amount of money into a reserve account that RD has control over whether we spend it or not on capital projects. And so we maintain that for purposes of meeting deductibles if we have a significant incident that requires our insurance to kick in, emergencies that come up, that kind of thing. But that fund, as a self-administered fund, self-funded fund, does not have the capability of growing at a pace that you can do great planning for that money. So every now and then we get an opportunity to apply for a specific kind of a grant. And we're bringing that grant to you this evening. Early in June, the Rural Development Program, the Department of Agriculture, offered a 2021 Housing Preservation Grant for rural, low-income housing. That can be multifamily, it can be Section 8, it can be individual homeowners, actually, that are willing to renovate homes, preserve homes, and use them for low-income housing. At Cottonwood Acres, we have 24 units. And this spring, 2 of our units had the water heater go out all of a sudden. These are special water heaters. They fit underneath the counters. They have upper and lower heating elements in them. They were all installed basically at the same time. And when we hired Benjamin Franklin to come out and replace those because they had them available, and water heaters are not available nowadays, they informed us that we could count on all of them going out pretty soon. And all of a sudden, this grant became available. When I called the regional office, they said, yes, water heaters would definitely fit for multifamily units, but the Halstead Housing Authority is not allowed to apply. City governments are allowed to apply. So I called my very best friend, Ethan, and I said, Ethan, what would be the possibility of the city of Halstead considering sponsoring this if we were to carry the weight and do the work? And he said, we would love to work with you. He's the nicest guy. He's the nicest guy. And we would love to work with you. So he and I have been putting this together, and I submitted this evening to you in a rough draft of the pre-application form, which I hope has been given to you. And I am here to answer any questions that you might have concerning this pre-application for the Housing Preservation Grant.
Well, first, I'd really like to thank you for setting it up as you did. You answered a lot of questions just by setting it up.
Well, thank you.
I did look at the prices on those water heaters. And they're pretty pricey, aren't they?
They are very pricey. But the price that's quoted, and the grant does not require competitive bids. But the price that's quoted is all parts and installation and purchase of the units. Mm-hmm. The reason that I've submitted a bid from Ben Franklin is because that national platform that they have, the leverage that they have, they can acquire this amount of units, where if we were to buy a similar product at Home Depot for about $800, there's a 4-month to 1 year wait on them. They're just simply not making water heaters because there's not steel to do it. So that's the reason we've gone with Ben Franklin, so that we could get on this and do it quickly, have access to the actual units, make sure that we have a reliable source of installation, warranty for a year, a variety of issues.
I think the water heaters typically have a 6-year warranty and a 1-year labor, so that's a manufacturer's warranty. I don't believe that's Benjamin Franklin. I would highly recommend, from the prices I see, and I'm going to say that I've been in this business for 40 years, and I've been through shortages, I've been through inflation, all the stuff that's going on right now. The prices you've been quoted on the water heaters and installation is atrocious. Atrocious. I would ask you to get 2 bids in consideration of taxpayers. And after the meeting, if you'd like, I could give you a couple names of companies that could probably provide you with a bid. I think you're on a pretty tight time frame if I looked at this right.
Yes, our application the pre-application must be in a week from today,
Okay,
electronically.
you could apply for this total amount, but not necessarily have to use that amount, correct?
That's my understanding.
And you could use any other funds for your project, any other projects that are on site?
I do not know. I do not know, because when we did the cost analysis on it, what we were looking at with the cost of purchasing them ourselves from Home Depot or something like that, and then hiring plumbers to install them, because these aren't in closets, they're underneath counters, and they're a little difficult to get to. And so, we felt that it was worth this, but with that suggestion, I will take it and follow with it.
Well, here's the thing, you've got a limited amount of space to work with. You're not just gonna come in and put a tall standing
It's
water
an
heater.
it's an under-counter
Right,
unit.
right. So the citizens understand this. what
Ed
we're
could
talking about.
probably give you a whole lot of specific information about this. You probably put these ones in that are leaving.
I've had a few put in when I was out there.
Yeah, right.
So while we're not talking about a real off-the-shelf type product,
Right.
it is somewhat of a specialty product, which I would imagine would bear a little bit more in cost, but I agree with Sam, those are some pretty stiff numbers. So,
Yeah, we paid those numbers when we put the two in because we had tenants that didn't have hot water.
Well,
Period. They needed it.
I mean, I am not opposed at all to your submittal of
Right.
Benjamin Franklin, but I would encourage additional quotes just to make sure you're getting the best bang for your dollar. It seems kind of high to me, but then again, I don't know the market either.
Okay?
I did a little preliminary work on it. The water heaters are around 600, 700 apiece at the most. Their bid is 2,300. That's a lot of installation cost. It really threw up a red flag. And-
Okay?
yeah, I just,
And as far as it is a commodity unit. They're everywhere in about every apartment building. One thing that you said it's a double element unit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a little unusual on a 30. Usually they're a single element. But anyway, I'll get you names of a couple
Thank you,
companies.
sir.
If you want to utilize them, it's up to you.
Certainly, I will absolutely utilize them.
Do we just need a consensus for support on this, Ethan, or a motion?
No, you'll want a motion because we actually, essentially you're serving as the fiscal agent, so we'll sign that final documentation and it'll either have my signature or your signature on it, so.
Okay.
If
And I-
we're- One other thing.
Go ahead, Sam.
If we're taking responsibility for this, one thing I would really like to know is if you're applying for a $58,000, $50,000 grant, whatever it was, I'd like to know if it has to be used in total, or if only the amount you use, that we get the grant for, that apparently we're gonna be responsible for it, can the rest be turned back, or can it be used in other areas? And I think you've gotta have it back by the 19th. That doesn't leave a lot of time to research, but
Phones work real well, and I have numbers.
Well, and I will echo Councilman Farmer's sentiments because I actually seen the price myself and made a few phone calls and did verify that it seems a little steep. So I would encourage you to reach out.
Certainly.
But I think as far as supporting the grant, the council is probably gonna be in favor of that, and we'll find out in a minute if they put a motion out here.
but it's going to be on the dollars.
No,
Yeah, just for the fiscal agent, because it would be a straight pass through to the city, so say they apply for 50 and would only get 40, that it would come to us and we'd send that to them and,
Okay, but what if the bids are $25,000 and the grant was for 40,000? You understand what I'm saying there?
yeah, they, typically in this, and then if I'm wrong, this is actually a pre-application, so they will probably, I imagine we're gonna have to do this again. This is kind of, usually on federal grants, they use a pre-application to narrow down and go through, and so they'll fine tune everything, but he can get those and we can make sure when we submit those, signatures and whatnot, that they're applying for whatever that dollar amount is.
If that's the case, I would not be opposed to it.
with that, if there's no more questions or discussion, I would make a motion to approve, City of Halstead to act as sponsoring entity for the fiscal agent and the fiscal agent for USDA Rural Housing Preservation Grant for the Halstead Housing Authority, and authorization for the mayor or staff to sign necessary documents to apply for the grant.
second.
Got the motion and the second, for this grant sponsorship. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those same sign, motion carries.
Thank you so very
Congratulations.
much.
Good luck. I hope you get it.
So do our tenants.
Thank you both.
Thank you so
you.
much.
And congratulations, Donita.
Next item on the, go ahead. Next item on the agenda is consideration of resolution number 7-12-21-09. This is a revenue neutral rate hearing. I believe Ethan will bring us up to par on that.
Yes, this resolution, and you can also see the notice that Harvey County subsequently provided as well, just to be in line with Senate Bill 13 and those requirements. Notice has to come from the governing body of the intent to of the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate as given to us by Harvey County, and then setting the date of the revenue neutral public hearing. The reason that hearing date is blank is because we basically have two options. You can choose to have the revenue neutral rate hearing the same night as your budget public hearing. You still do have to have two public hearings. You can't open just one public hearing for both purposes. Or we can split those amongst our various meetings. The earliest we could hold a revenue neutral rate hearing is on August 20th, according to the rules and the statute for this year. So that means we could have either the revenue neutral rate hearing on August 23rd or on September 13th. And then we would look to have, no matter what, our budget hearing, the public hearing for the budget on September 13th. So really just wanted to put this out there for your all's decision on whether you want to try and do two public hearings in one evening or want to separate those across multiple meetings. And then we did, as talked about in the work session, this sets the upper cap of what mills we could levy for our budget, and we set that at that 77.5 number, which gives us a top ceiling of what we could do in a budget. We can obviously come in under that number and not be in violation or cross purpose of what the intent of the law is. So it's really up to you all on what date you would like to have a public hearing, or if you want to do two in one night.
I'm
I'm okay with 2 in one night.
I'm all right with 2 in one night.
August 23rd would be on a normal council day.
Yeah, both those dates, the 23rd and September 13th, are normal council
If we were
meetings.
to do both of them, would it be September 13th?
Yeah,
I'm all right with doing both of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that'd be fine.
So we just need that motion, right?
yeah, just a motion to approve
Okay.
the resolution with the September 13th date.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 07-12-21-09.
Okay. You can do it either of those 2 nights, but
Sorry,
that's fine.
we could have moved it up too.
Okay, the resolution regarding the governing body's intent to levy a property tax exceeding the revenue neutral rate and setting a public hearing on September the 13th, 2021 to that effect.
Second.
Okay, we have the motion and second we're actually passing this resolution, correct? To pass resolution 7-12-2109. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. That resolution carries.
Do we want to do this like an hour ahead of normal council meeting or make it part of council meeting?
At 7, we'd make it just part of the council meeting, basically.
Okay, we'll move on down the agenda, and we've got item 5, consideration of resolution 7-12-21-10, K-Camp interlocal agreement. Let Ethan bring us up to par on that.
At their annual meeting of their board, K-Camp, which is the Kansas County Association Multi-Line Pool, which the city utilizes for our property and liability insurance, basically made changes to their bylaws, which subsequently updates the interlocal cooperation agreement that the city had entered into to participate with K-Camp. So this is largely just an item that's needed to continue our participation with the K-Camp insurance pool. Did forward this on to City Attorney Jantz, who's probably viewed it from multiple agencies, and I'll let him speak if he has any comments or concerns with it, but not a lot jumped out to me as I read it as far as it changing our relationship with K-Camp, so.
I think that's accurate. It basically just, it's more administrative changes that they've made throughout in terms of the agreement itself. Doesn't change any material relationship that we have with K-Camp, so.
Well, with that being said, again, if there are no questions, further discussion, I'd make a motion to approve resolution number 7-12-21-10, a resolution approving the Fourth Amendment and restated bylaws and interlocal cooperation agreement for Kansas County Association multi-line pool and authorizing the mayor's signature.
Second.
Have the motion and second to approve resolution 7-12-21-10. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That one carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration of KMGA invoice for legal costs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, you have a motion, or, sorry, you have an invoice for $15,790. This is for the city of Halstead's share as formulated by KMGA for the legal costs that have been incurred by that agency thus far. KMGA, again, is kind of like K-Camp. It's a pool of municipal entities that purchase gas together. During the winter event, they had already secured legal counsel and financial help to try and immediately get the ball rolling on what could be done. One of the big things that we haven't been especially vocal about is beyond the high gas prices we paid because we were under flow orders from the state, and Halstead specifically doesn't have a set contract with like Southern Star in terms of gas supply, which we're working on remedying that. We were subject to fines because we essentially took more gas off the pipeline than we were entitled to during that event. The operational flow order, of course, meant that they couldn't shut us off because of life safety concerns, but it did mean we were, in theory, subject to penalty. Something that this legal counsel was able to do is to work with those suppliers and with FERC to get those fees waived. For the city of Halstead, we were looking at anywhere between $100,000 to $150,000 in fees on top of the $2 million gas bill. So we did not end up paying those. Those were waived. So there was help there. KMGA also has now had had to retain attorneys for pending litigation in Kansas. And so these costs, in full disclosure, I do sit on the executive committee board that helped make this decision. It was determined that spreading these legal costs amongst the entire membership was the fairest way, and they tried to do it with a blend, not only utilizing how much gas each entity used during the actual event, but also looking at 2020 usage as a whole. And so this would take into effect some of the other KMGA members, like power plants and stuff, because we all have a vested interest in KMGA succeeding. And so it split those costs amongst all of us. So you have the update there from the KMGA executive director and the president of the executive committee, explaining a little bit about what they were able to do and the services that were retained. This is not, we hate to see any additional costs doing it, but honestly, we had a lot of residents ask why we unilaterally weren't pursuing it. I'll let the city attorney Jant's comment, but I think the amount of legal help we've been able to basically have on our behalf at that rate is a pretty good rate for the type of legal help that we did receive, and the firms, in the DC area and stuff that were obtained. And again, they were working on this all the way back in February. The big issue of why this was billed out is these costs basically were paid on the front side out of KMGA's reserves. And KMGA as an entity has a policy that would see if the net equity of the organization drops below a certain threshold, they charge a surcharge, which is a per unit cost, which gets that built back up as soon as possible. So those costs, by the way, our gas ordinance and stuff are written, would be passed on to consumers. I mean, we've been subject to the surcharge in the past periodically due to just fluctuations in the market or when that reserve is dropped for KMGA to build it back up. This way, with the cities having the option to pay outright, it would help us keep that reserve from dropping and restore that to where it needs to be, where that surcharge can be avoided, and we're not passing that on to our end users. That's I believe it's the best option for our users, is we can pay this out of our reserves. No one has a crystal ball to know exactly where all this is going. The investigations are still underway. This legal counsel is still working with the Attorney General's office for the state of Kansas on their investigation, some of the pending litigation that's mentioned there. But this is thought to basically pay for everything that's been done thus far and also provide enough for ongoing costs for the remainder of the year, assuming something doesn't happen that someone's not anticipating. So that is what I have as far as comments on this invoice. I do recommend that we pay it, even if we don't like it. And again, if we were unilaterally had engaged attorneys or that, our bill would be much larger than $15,000 for the amount of time that was spent dealing with the Federal Energy Regulation Commission, and the subsequent state agencies and the suppliers. So,
Are we going to have ongoing legal expenses?
there's still anticipated to be some. It's just, it depends on, what lawsuits they've got notice, of that pending lawsuit that was mentioned in the letter. I don't know that they've actually received, a formal indication that that is going forward or not. So a lot of it is still kind of up in the air on that, or, if at some point something comes or there's an end result on that investigation that would suddenly thrust KMGA into, pursuing a more active legal strategy, then that could change the picture. But this is based on what they're currently seeing and what they believe should happen for foreseeable future.
And as long as we're part of KMGA, we are KMGA, and it's our expenses.
Yes, I mean, KMGA
I
is,
asked you your crystal ball. What do you think the odds are of recouping any of this?
I honestly don't know.
Well, if you look at this particular incident, we spent $15,000 to save between 100 and 150 in additional fees, so 10% investment, pretty well worth it.
And
If they can keep that ratio about the same and maybe recoup some of that $2 million, that'd be handy.
I'm comforted in the fact that Ethan is on the executive board and involved with KMGA at the highest possible level and can advise this council and its governing body on the right things that we need to do.
I'd like to jump in with Ed on that, and thank you. We're getting it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. But after reading through this issue earlier, while none of us really like spending extra if we don't have to, this is, in my belief, the least painful path for the citizens of Halstead.
Agree.
But it still hurts.
It still hurts.
Still hurts, yeah.
With that, if there are no other comments or questions, I'd make a motion to approve the payment of the invoice for legal cost assessment to KMGA for the amount not to exceed $15,790 from the Gas Reserve Fund.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to pay this invoice to KMGA. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Last item under new business is discussion of draft noise ordinance. I'll start with you, Ethan.
Thank you. I believe you all received earlier today an email from Brad's office. And yeah, hopefully then later on you received a second, more comprehensive version of those two noise ordinances. And I will turn it over to City Attorney Jantz to kind of discuss those.
The first is probably the one that I believe fits best with what was discussed or the potential instruction. It also has the greatest amount of flexibility in it for the police department in terms of their ability to do an abatement order if they so choose without necessarily having to go through the court system. And I have found over time after drafting 20 or 30 of these that that's probably the element of it that is most important to citizens who want some redress quickly, and also for the law enforcement officer on the scene. You'll note that it does not have any requirement for proof with a decibel meter, It does not have any of that objective standard installed in it. We do this based upon, can I hear it at 50 feet? And if I can, and it's annoying at that level, the officer gets to make that subjective call. We usually expect that the officer will establish the probable cause, either for an immediate abatement order or bringing it prosecutorially as an unclassified misdemeanor directly to municipal court, or both. If it's a repeat offense, for example, and that sort of thing. It creates the greatest amount of teeth with the least amount of procedural requirements. And I don't mean that in any way to deprive a citizen of their right to due process. They still have it. They can come in, they can appeal to this body, they can appeal to the municipal court system if they so choose, depending upon how it's venued. But it works well for the general kinds of things that we're going to see and the things that were discussed last time when we went through it. The second one was kind of an inspiration. I just decided I would give you one that is more detailed, that I've had to draw in several instances where the first one didn't work. And they had enough challenges that they went ahead and invested in decibel meters. Officers all did special training. They put all of that in place, and that one even includes like our Jake break kind of thing. So I put everything into one that generally ever is encountered, and that includes our industrial users in town. If we have citizens who are annoyed by some noise element of in those settings, we try to define that pretty clearly, because clearly there's a lot of instances where industrial commercial units will have noise emanating from them, and try to deal with all that. The definition section is much longer in that instance. The end result and the upshot of it is about the same, but it's much more formalized. It generally involves citation in the form of a complaint that's drawn, and then everything is done through court. And we prove it up and go that route. So I think it comes down to making a determination of just how formal you want to be with it, to be honest. The first one, I think, will address what we need for it to. The second just gets into even greater detail if we feel like, well, might as well have all that there in case we ever need it. I have not candidly found that that's a real requirement in cities this size, but it's certainly up to this body if you want to go ahead and be that comprehensive with it. So the intent was to give you those to look through and also juxtapose against each other, and then look at it for formal action at the next meeting or whatever you wish to do.
So the first one, I read it, I didn't have anything that I found that would need to be changed. The second one, on the other hand, there's some things in it that I don't agree with.
And again, and I don't blame you, I mean, the second one is meant to be, I had instances where it has kind of evolved.
Yeah,
It's got stuff in it that I wouldn't have put in one either,
yeah, I mean,
but it's probably the most comprehensive one I've ever drawn.
I didn't get your email, so I don't know which one you're talking about, 1 and 2.
They were both sent to your Halstead, well, the first one,
The second one, the comprehensive one, is the one that you have printed.
and it's also on your, it was sent by me to your Halstead KS email.
So, yeah, I've got
About 6
the
p.m.
first one, and collectively, a couple of us were here talking about the first one, and we were like, yeah, we can go with this one.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I have with the noise ordinance is it's subjective. It's not measurable. You can't measure what I hear versus what Sam hears or Denise hears or anybody. And if I find it objectionable, they may not.
Yes.
So how do you
You
measure
measure
the
it with the
point?
proper equipment by
That's-
Brad's
Well, I mean,
second
I'm
ordinance.
not suggesting that we do the decibel thing, but the whole ordinance is subjective.
Well, here's something, when you have a lot of citizens reaching out and texting us as individuals and saying, I think that's kind of a meter right there. The public are saying, hey, these cars are annoying us.
Perfect example, in Newton, McDonald's, Saturday night, 11:30. I'm rolling through the drive-through with my son, who at that time was 16. Car goes by with 2 of his friends in it. The subwoofers in that thing were shaking the windows, not in just my car, but at the McDonald's, the drive-up window, because I reached out and touched it and it was vibrating. I found it offensive. Most everyone else around me found it offensive. He looked at me and said, it's kind of cool. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, it is subjective.
It is.
And it depends upon what you like. Some people's pollution is somebody else's art. I don't know. But again, the subjective nature of that, law enforcement uses that subjectivity generally. If it's annoying is kind of like in the eye of the beholder, I agree. But if you have a complaint from a citizen who says, I can't hear myself think, I can't hear my TV, that's generally going to take it past subjective to the objective nature of it and give them the opportunity to say, okay, that's it. Set of, same thing with a set of mufflers that I happened to have on a car and asked if I was violating local law, and he said, depends on how you start out from a stop sign.
There you go.
Exactly, you know,
It's-
my bike, my Harley, it
Yes.
can be loud. but
Mine
I
too.
don't jump on it until
Yeah.
I'm out of town.
Yeah.
But it
and-
is totally subjective.
And it is. But this has given us enough for the law enforcement to be able to say, okay, we're going to take action on this and at least pull them over, stop them and tell them to do something. Turn it down if it's a stereo. If it's a set of pipes, if they insist upon some kind of an objective standard, we can go in and have them measured. And there are certain things that are considered injurious to the human ear by medical professionals. If they're that loud, probably going to stop you right there and tell you got to put some baffles back in those things.
It can be used as a deterrent.
Yeah. So I understand. And I've heard this before. That's the reason that it came to mind to send you the second one. If we want to be absolute, well, it's kind of like a radar gun. I know you're speeding. Now I know exactly how fast you're speeding. I know how noisy this is.
Still, but if I hear something objectionable, call Josh. Josh comes out, it's gone. It can't be measured at that point.
Yeah.
So,
Although we can usually hear them across town and they can trace them down in a little while if they need to on a quiet night.
Well, when you get loud mufflers and it goes into third gear, still racking off, there's more than one violation.
I'd say that's probably true too.
Well, you do have something in here, Brad, though, on the first one. Section 4.3D.
Yeah.
You said in such a manner as to create continuing noise disturbance at 50 feet from such device when operated in or on a motor vehicle on a public right-of-way or space open to the public. So
And-
if they can hear it at 50 feet, there's an issue.
but what if you're at 51 or 2 feet or 49 feet? You know, I mean,
It's true.
And it
still
depends on the,
subjective.
true.
And
It's
it's
still
still-
not measurable.
and it depends on which way the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
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 Winds is open or closed.
I
I just find it difficult to be,
non-arbitrary. Yes, I know.
yes.
And again, there isn't a good solution unless you leap into this circumstance. And then, yes, initially, you may make the complaint, they're long gone, the officer has to find them again later, hold the meter, say, I got it, and even then, depending upon how close you are to the vehicle, I mean, those kinds of things weigh into that. And so I had to establish that graph, or that table, so that you know when, where, and how.
Once again, I'm not opposed to it. I just don't see how it can be measurable and stand up to any argument.
Yeah, what ends up happening, to help with that, is if someone, we do the abatement order, but they insist upon having their day in court. So we write them the citation, we bring them in. The officer, the complaining witness, and anyone else who is around has to come in, and I have to put on this parade of witnesses who all say, we all found it offensive. That becomes the reasonable man standard. If I've got, by reasonable person, maybe that's a better way to say that these days, but under the old common law, it was reasonable man standard. If I can bring in 3 or 4 people who all find it offensive, and usually there are that many and more who have called and said, that's it, I've had it.
Do we want to start saving all the texts that we get from citizens?
Well, and that's my point. I get them too. I get people calling, go, what does Halstead have? And we didn't. And so it's one way to address it and at least gives us something to start with. And again, it is, yes, people can be heard and they can go in front of the judge and say, I don't think it was that noisy. Well, here's 4 other people who have all said under oath that it was, and they found it offensive. That usually carries the day.
And it's a tool that can be used when necessary.
It is more than we have now. I guess that's the best way I can put
It is
it.
more than we have now.
So,
I mean, if, we have a very similar, to the first ordinance is like, you know, what's currently in code for excessive
On your phone.
excessive barking or excessive
Yeah.
noise from a dog. You know, people that live with an animal that barks all the time probably don't find it excessive.
Yeah.
If you're not, and again, we have to rely on the officers to use best discretion, and Josh will probably attest to that is largely gonna be complaint driven of, you know,
Yeah.
the neighbor calls and says, this dog's been barking nonstop all the time.
Well, I know we've all heard the noisy cars that we're talking about. So I'm not opposed at all to the ordinance. I'm just finding it difficult for a measurable criteria.
Yeah, and I will tell you, after many years of doing this, I don't think I can offer something that's going to address that perfectly.
I don't think.
There's just not, unless everyone carries a decibel meter and knows how to use it around with them and can, have the appropriate gauge to, the car was 37.8 meters from me at the time that I did this. There's no way we're gonna satisfy all that.
I think the hopes from this is if we have an ordinance in place that gives Josh and his guys the ability to pull somebody over for this, it should act as a deterrent and do what it's supposed to do.
I think
And
so.
that's our hope.
Yeah.
It's only gonna take a few times before the word gets out. I mean, the word's already gotten out that we've been discussing this anyway, so
Yeah.
It has quieted down quite a bit, hasn't it?
it has.
Well, I tell you what, I've got cars with mufflers on them, and I love the sound of a muscle car. I love the sound of good mufflers. Motorcycles, I mean, great. Don't rack them off in town. I don't, try not to anyway. Sometimes temptation overrules, but
Unless you've got a car show and you're launching them in town, it's,
So, we want to discuss this more, or are we going to have you drop an actual draft? We've got the draft, but,
yeah, I just thought you'd want to look at it. We talked about that, and if you want to think about those kinds of things, because that's usually the question I get. And then, it's ready to go for your next meeting if you so choose.
what's Newton using?
Theirs is kind of a combination. It's a little bit between these two, but it's the same 50 feet. They're not necessarily requiring a decibel meter,
The other small communities have noise ordinances.
most of them.
And if you take industrial, we've had situations in the past where industrial noise needs to be addressed, and if we don't have a noise ordinance, how do we address that? So this, I think it's important that we do this, but within reason. We can add to it as things would develop in the future, but.
And both of these address the other one that is very common, and people sometimes are innocent about it. They race dirt bikes on weekends, but during the week and at night, late at night, they're tuning those things, and they've got them sitting in a garage and sometimes out or with the door open, hammering that thing, or a car or whatever it may be. People down the street are ready to shoot them, but we don't have anything in place. This addresses that as well. The quiet enjoyment of your property is something everyone expects in town to be able to do. And when you disturb that, so we've even had the refrigeration units running on, the semis sitting and running all night long, and they get loud enough. In some cases, people will want to complain about those, so all of that sort of thing is addressable here.
I think I'm okay with the first version. I mean, like Sam said, we can add to it if need be as we
Yeah.
move forward.
Put it in place and see how it works, and if we have to modify it, we can.
So I'll make a motion to table the action on the proposed ordinance until the next city council meeting. And I don't think there's any changes that we need to be made at this point, so.
second.
Have the motion and the second to table this until next meeting. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. We will revisit that at the next meeting. We are done with new business on our agenda this evening. We do have 2 executive sessions scheduled tonight, and I would entertain the motion for the first one at this time.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I move that the Halstead City Council recess into executive session for 15 minutes to discuss the City of Halstead employee performance and maintain privacy rights pursuant to the personnel matters of non-elected personnel exception, KSA 75 4319B1, And I ask that in addition to the governing body, the following persons join the governing body in executive session: the city manager and the city attorney. The open meeting and governing body to reconvene in the city council chamber at 8:05 PM.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to adjourn to executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. We'll move into executive session. Okay, we are back from our first executive session. Is there any action to be taken as a result of?
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to allow city manager 80 hours of vacation carryover into 2022.
Second.
Got the motion and the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Now I would entertain a motion to move into our second executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Halstead City Council recess into executive session for 10 minutes to discuss contract negotiations pursuant to the consultation with an attorney on matters that would be deemed privilege in the attorney-client relationship, exception KSA 75-4319B2, and ask that in addition to the governing body, the following persons join the governing body in executive session: the city manager and the city attorney. The open meeting and governing body to reconvene in the city council chamber at 8:15 PM.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to return to executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We'll move back to the room, council.
8:15?
Yeah.
We are back from that executive session. Is there any action to be taken as a result of? Hearing nothing from the council, we're gonna move on the agenda, and the next section is reports. And first item is governing body, so tonight I'll start with you, Denise.
I've got nothing.
Mr. Farmer?
Well, all I can say is the street sweeping has begun, and it appears it started on the west side of town. And if they do every street as clean as they have cleaned in front of my street, there shouldn't be an unhappy citizen in Halstead. You could eat off of that street.
I did notice that myself too, when I was out and about, the street sweeping was going on, and it certainly looked like the equipment looked a little newer than some of the equipment we've seen in the past, so that was encouraging. Mike?
No, you guys said it all. That's what I was gonna say, so.
No, sir.
I have nothing to add, no.
Okay, well then, we'll move on to Ethan and the manager report.
Previous month activity for city departments were as follows. Police had 124 calls for service, 48 traffic stops, and 14 criminal cases. Chief Orem reported that as of June 29th, approximately 2 hours per shift has been spent on Main Street, and no J-turn violations have been observed by the patrol officers during those periods of enforcement, most likely due to the presence of the officers or just the issue being put out there last meeting, but they will continue doing that for the foreseeable future. The new service pistol should come in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then the order for the car and body camera systems has been placed with WatchGuard, and we don't have an anticipated delivery date as of yet. Fire had 24 calls for services, including 3 structure auto aids, 9 EMS assists, and multiple grass and wildfire calls, which included mutual aid being received and being given by Halstead Fire. Staff have obtained a hose testing machine and will begin testing hoses in the near future, and department members also trained on the high-pressure UTV skid. EMS had 48 calls for service, bringing the yearly total to 287 calls. EMS 21, the command administrative vehicle, is now in service, and staff are currently engaged in pharmacology, continuing education, and updating vehicle and equipment checklists. Parks and Recreation continue maintenance of the ball and pool areas, as well as the levee walking path, and have been working on storm cleanup. The pool continues operations and has only been closed 1 day so far due to weather, but has had some early closures due to storms. Staff believe that current reserves of chlorine should last for the rest of the pool season, and the updates to the chemical feed system are working well. Baseball and softball seasons have ended following several makeup games due to weather delays. Pickleball and community kickball continue to be offered on Sundays, with pickleball at the middle school north gym and kickball taking place at Williams Park. Both of those happen at 7 p.m. and they are open to the public. The summer theater program is also underway for the shows held during Old Settlers, and 64 kids have signed up to participate in that. Director Williams just wanted to acknowledge Claire Clifford for her work in organizing and leading that program. Wedgwood reports that total play-in sales remain strong for summer. Multiple tournaments remain on the calendar, and only one has had to be rescheduled due to weather thus far. Staff continue working on sodding the tee boxes, aerifying greens, and irrigation head replacement. Staff also dyed the pond to try and help with the algae problems due to the temperature swings that have occurred lately. Public Works performed 3 code violation yard mowing remediation, repaired sprinkler lines at City Hall and General Maintenance, removed the 3-way signal at 7th and Chestnut to allow USD 440 to work on their parking in the area, did pothole repair on 10th and 11th, grading of gravel streets, and participated in the levee inspection. For utilities, staff repaired 2 water services, responded to a water main break on North Street, repaired a wastewater service line at the ball fields, repaired 2 gas services, replaced 1 gas yard line, responded to 2 gas leak calls, and participated in the KCC inspection for the gas utility. Public Works also assisted the library and the Kansas Learning Center for Health with sign projects and the bike repair installation, and also did storm cleanup. The city was informed that we were not successful with our application for CDBG CV3 funding from the state. Staff is consulting with Ransom Financial on how to better our application should a subsequent round of funding be made available again. I did complete the application for the ARPA funds for the city of Halstead and should hear more on that in the coming days. Administrative staff is still largely working on training new employees, closing out the second quarter, and then work on the 2022 budget. A few notices I did want to mention. The first is that street sweeping, as previously mentioned, began this week and will continue for the next week or so as weather allows. We just ask that all residents try to limit parking on the street as much as possible during this time to allow the contractors to do as good as a job as possible. Second, a reminder that hazardous materials, ashes, and vegetation should not be placed in your trash carts or disposed of during normal trash pickup. Nisley reported an issue back to staff last week that was caused by the disposal of such items, and thankfully the issue was taken care of before any serious damage occurred to their truck or potentially someone got hurt. But improper disposal can see removal of your polycart or further action being taken for improper disposal. And then finally, there are over 90 pet licenses that have not been renewed for 2021. The deadline to avoid late fees was May 31st, and notices to everyone that had a registered animal last year were mailed out in June, asking for registration to be completed by July 15th. Halstead PD will be making contact and issuing citations beginning on July 19th for any unregistered animals within the city limits. So please register your animals if you have not yet done so. All you need to do that is current proof of up-to-date rabies vaccination. And finally, the EDC annual meeting is this Friday over the lunch hour in Newton at the Meridian Center. And if any of you would like to attend, please let me know as soon as possible, and I will make those arrangements. And that is all I have. Oh, one more item. The contractor for the security systems is still fighting a staffing issue, and they are down a crew, and they updated us and believe that July 26th is the week that they should be out to do, begin installation there, so.
This is for the cameras, right?
Yeah, for the cameras and
Did we have a late penalty on that?
We talked about it.
That was the one that you wanted to,
That was
You did put the 6 weeks guidance on them, and I can tell them.
Those are always
That was-
great little clauses in those contracts.
That was the only question I was gonna bring up for your report, Ethan. Council, you guys have any questions for him?
No.
Then I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, council, and thank you, Halstead. We are adjourned.